Hey, quiet on the set! Welcome to South Africa. Right here, check this out. This right here, this pole, this is the fence line to Kruger National Park. So here, in the park, out of the park. In the park, no ticket, out of the park. Okay, seriously, the reason I invited you here today is just because sand is something that a lot of riders really get nervous about. And this is a real sand wash. It's not a training field or anything else. You can see if we look down the river here, it continues. If we look down the river that way, there's no other crossing. This is all we have. I'm riding with a group of 3 other riders, and we all had to come across this. So we thought, what a great opportunity to share with you how I get across this. So I ran across it a couple more times just to show you, and I'll show you what happened. This here is what I would consider a class 4. And remember, if you classify your terrain, my bike is fully loaded. I have all my camp gear. I have all my clothes with me. I have all my camera gear. I'm wearing street boots or touring style adventure boots. That puts it at a class 4. If you were riding a bike with no gear whatsoever, this would be roughly class 3. And the reason is, it has an end to it. This isn't endless sand. It's deep, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it has an exit. Now, that keeps it out of the class 5 category. Like any obstacle, the first thing you do is you start off with the approach. If I look up on the hill here, on the right side, or my right, as you're coming down, it would be your left. It's a nice smooth approach coming down. The rocks aren't too bad. Also, it puts me in a high spot where I can get a really good view of what the sand wash looks like. As I came down, I crossed down to this lower track here. My plan was to try to approach the sand wash with as slight an angle as possible. If I come into this and I have a really steep drop off, then it's going to be more difficult because it's that sand, or your front tire first dips into the sand. It's going to slow you down quite a bit. And then we have to push through to get the tire back up on top of it. By decreasing the angle of approach, it should make it easier. Now, I did this several times after the first crossing. Going across on this side, now this is a pretty deep sand. And if you look down here, take a look, come here, you'll see this really doesn't have a bottom. And what that means is that the chances of me getting through this sand without spinning the tire is really, really low. What we don't want to do is spin the tire so much that we dig the back tire in and we get stuck. We want to stay up on top. And the way I control that tire spin is by just little blips of the throttle. So it doesn't stall and I don't dig in too much. And then also, if it gets really challenging, then I can start feathering that clutch on the left side to make sure that the bike doesn't get out of control. If I'm going too fast or I'm not as smooth on the throttle, I can trail or drag the rear brake just a bit, and that'll help buffer so I'm not putting too much power down into the sand to dig out. That's the idea here. We'll come back and talk about vision and body position in a second. Now, the exit is the other thing I'm paying attention to, and just like the approach, I want a shallow exit if possible. My target, and the exit I had the first time I came through, was right here on the right. And you'll see there's hard packed dirt here. This gives me very predictable traction. Also, I have roots, which I can predict, and I have this nice embedded rock. This embedded rock, all of this means I have traction. Once I get the back wheel up on this, I can thrust my way out. During the demonstrations I'm showing on this video, I ended up here to the left, and then one I ended up all the way over here. And this is kind of the worst scenario because it's very steep and it polishes out and becomes very slick very quickly. Okay, just check it. Now let's talk about technique. When I'm riding across on this sand wash, I want to get the front wheel up on top of the sand so it can find its way. You notice how I said that? I said it can find its way. I'm not the one in control of the bike. I'm not the one telling it where to go. If I want to go right and the bike goes left and I try to control it, the front end's going to bury into the sand. I'm going to hit the ground. Now we have to dig out. So I'm letting the front end just find its way across. To help that happen and to help it go straight, I'm going to shift weight just slightly to the back. Not so much, I'm never hanging onto the handlebars, but I want the weight back over the back wheel. It gives a little more traction to the back and allows the front to get back up on top of the sand. So that's where my body position is going to be. And again, always light. I'm never hanging on with the handlebars. I'm always locking in with my lower body. And I'm always waiting for that bike to suddenly slow and push me forward. If that happens, I can pull the clutch in and then I can feather the power to get that front end back up and out of the sand. If I happen to lose momentum, but that front end kicks and knocks me out of balance, then it's okay to dab. A dab is not dropping your feet to the sand. That's a bad thing. If you're doing this, going through the sand, and you're paddle walking, that's bad and you're gonna get hurt. A dab is, I'm off balance, I step, and I'm back on the pegs. Maybe a step, back on the pegs, but you're just trying to kick off of the ground to get up, because if that bike goes down, you don't want to get pinned underneath it. Bad things happen when that happens. Vision is always a fundamental and a critical aspect, and instead of starting with it, I'm ending with it because it's what I want you to remember and have in your mind, because more than anything, if your vision is wrong, you will be tense on the motorcycle, you'll end up dropping, you'll build up your fear, and you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. When I approach and I'm coming down the hill, my vision, I'm up high and I'm watching that sand wash and I'm finding my exit first. Once I find my exit, I can try to find an approach and come up with a plan to connect the two. It may or may not work, but I start with a plan. Once the vision has gone through that sand wash, I pick up onto the exit and I always know where I'm going. So I'm never going to be surprised as I come out of this, because once I get into the sand, it doesn't matter what happens. This sand is all the same. Whether it's got ridges in it or anything else, this little rock right here is not going to make a difference whether you make it or not. So we keep the eyes up and we steady all the way across. If the bike moves underneath me, I never look down at the bike to see what's happening, because it doesn't matter, I can feel it. I'm always looking all the way up. In review, start with a plan. Make sure you're committed when you start. Find a shallow approach. When you get into the sand, keep the front tire up on top. Keep enough weight over the back that you have control, but not so much that you don't have the ability to move forward, and you should never be holding on. Control the power with the throttle, and you can buffer with the rear brake if necessary, and you can also buffer with the clutch. Allow the bike to find its way to the other side, and always keep your eyes up to where you want to end up. Keeps fear down, keeps your success high. Now, with all of that said, as I mentioned, we're next to Kruger National Park, and the reason we're here is because I'm scouting for my 2022 tour to bring riders down here, and we're looking for critters to take pictures of or to fly the drone, because we can fly the drone on this side, but I can't fly the drone on the other side. Whew, it's warm out here. With that said, I'm gonna go ride.